insurance agents from around the world. Hey guys, this is Scott Howell with the Insurance Guys podcast. Hey, let's talk about client experience for just a minute. Guys, we have got to start meeting our clients where they want to be met, not where you want to be met. This isn't about you. Okay, I know we would all love it to be about us. It's about our clients. We've got to start meeting them where they want to be met. I understand some of you want them to call the office. That's great. For those people that want that, that's fantastic. Every year, more and more people want to jump on a mobile app. They want to download their ID cards. They want easy. They want speed. They don't want to come by and drink coffee and talk to you for 45 minutes. Okay. One of the easiest ways you can do this is through your agency branded self-service platform. Guys, that's where GloveBox comes in. A carrier connected agency branded tool for your clients. Call today. Get a demo with GloveBox. Mention the Insurance Guys podcast to get 20% off for the life of your agency branded CXP. Guys, let's go meet our clients where they want to be met. Easy, speed. Have a great day.
Hey guys, it's Bradley. Every now and then a company comes across my desk that not only blows my mind in what they're able to accomplish, but we implement that particular technology in Portal, and it completely changes the way we do business. That's happened a few times with a few different companies, and it happened this year with Ascend. In case you don't know, Ascend saves agent time by simplifying the time-consuming process of collecting payments, premium financing, and carrier payables without the back and forth paperwork, integrated right into your checkout experience where customers can pay how they want. Credit, debit, ACH. Own the entire customer experience. It's branded to your agency and offer a modern checkout experience that your customers want. Ascend will also, this is the big one for me, automatically pay the provider, the carrier, the MGA, so you don't have to deal with the payables. It turns agency bill into direct bill. It combines the benefits of agency bill, owning the experience, with the convenience of direct bill. Don't have to worry about collections, payables, so you get the best of both worlds. And the best part is there's no subscription, no fee, and no cost to the agents. Stop wasting time on payments so you can focus on growing your business. Go to useascend.com/insurance guys. I'm telling you guys, this is not just a promotion. This company is going to change the insurance industry. They've already changed Portal. Useascend.com/insurance guys. That's USEASCEND.com/insurance guys. Tell them we sent you. Thanks.
Insurance agents from around the world, welcome to the Insurance Guys podcast, powered by GloveBox. God, I love GloveBox. My name is Scott Howell, your fearless host and leader, insurance agency owner and insurance evangelist for I Protect Insurance and Financial Services, based out of Huntsville, Alabama. And before we get started on today's episode, please help me welcome. He is a 6'3" sophomore from Mobile, Alabama. Parade first team All-American, Rivals 5-star recruit. He is a fantastic insurance agent and a great American. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the incomparable Mr. Bradley Flowers. How are you, Bradley?
I decided to be really extra and buy a TV to have you guys on. That way I could feel like I was in the room with you and the son of a gun is not working.
That's okay,
so
Bradley.
I'm okay, though. I'm good.
I'm calling Bradley out this morning, calling his intro out, and the only thing I could think in my head while I was saying that was, I wish I was there to give him a hug. He looks like he needs a hug today.
I know. We need it. We need I got 2 emails from carriers that pissed me off this morning. So I do need a hug.
I understand. Hey, Bradley, I got 2 Daniel Song stories to tell this morning.
Okay.
Not 1, 2.
Okay.
Before we intro our all-star guest today, who I'm extremely excited about having on this podcast today, because I can tell in the 2 minutes we talked to him before we came on, this is going to be one hell of a podcast. First Daniel Song story happens this morning. I have been learning and studying In-N-Out Burger because apparently they've got it figured out. Yesterday, I text Bradley at about 5 o'clock. Now, remember, guys, I'm doing about 16 things at one time when I text Bradley. I accidentally text this to a group text with Bradley and Daniel Song, and here's what the text said. This is to Bradley. Hey, man, I need you to get the CEO of In-N-Out Burger on the podcast. Can you do that? ? I wake up this morning, look at my text messages, And Daniel Song has texted back and said, yeah, man, I'll get started on that right away. And I respond to Daniel and I said, Daniel, I am so sorry that you got that text. I meant to just send that to Bradley, but he was on a group text with Bradley and I both. And I apologize publicly to Daniel for that.
I just assumed Daniel knew the guy that knew the girl. I was like, I didn't know,
That is absolutely
like, okay.
So, hey, podcast listeners, if you get some random text from me asking you to get Lewis Howes on the podcast, just know what's going on there, that Scott is old and he can't text anymore the right way. That's basically what
I'm just glad you didn't say something inappropriate that was totally out of context. And
right.
Daniel's like, oh my gosh, this guy's a psychopath.
Right. So here's my second Daniel Song story. Tuesday of this week, Daniel calls me with a business opportunity. And I said, Daniel,
Jim is going to love this story.
This is fantastic. It was an investment opportunity in an insurtech that will remain nameless.
Seed level, Daniel, doing great things.
Right. Yeah. In fact, Bradley and I are going to talk to him when we get off this podcast this morning. Right, Bradley?
We are.
And so I say to Daniel, I said, hey, listen, Bradley and I, because we have a separate LLC set up and we're business partners, we a lot of times we'll invest through the LLC that we have, so we can both invest and that kind of thing, just talking through this. So
sometimes it goes like this. Hey, Scott, we're doing this.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Okay. Where do I need to send the money? So I text Bradley and I said, hey, Bradley, I got an opportunity I need to talk to you about. When you get a chance, call me. Bradley calls me as I'm pulling in the driveway of my house, and I'm walking in the door and I've got the phone up to my ear, and my 15-year-old son, let me paint the picture for everybody, is laying in a lazy boy recliner sideways, watching Netflix. Lazy as hell. It's like 4:30 in the afternoon. I got the phone up to my ear. Bradley and I are talking about this investment opportunity. Could lead to, who knows, could be a multi-million-dollar opportunity one day. Who knows? And as I'm walking in the door with the phone up to my ear, talking to Bradley, my son turns the volume up on Netflix to try to drown me out. And I don't even put the phone on mute, guys. Bradley can hear every bit of this. I take the phone down mid-conversation and I say, son, I'm on the phone with one of my business partners talking about something that could be a multi-million-dollar opportunity.
That would pay for your inheritance.
Are you really turning up the volume on Netflix to try to drown me out from talking right now? Is that really what you're doing? And he just has this look on his face like, oh my God, my dad is about to kill me. That's the look he has on his face. So then I have to go stand outside in 100-degree weather to talk to Bradley because I can't even talk in my own house.
He was watching Ted Lasso.
Yeah, something real important. Guys, we've got an outstanding show for you today. I am super excited to have our guest on today. He is a rock star. He is an all-star. He's been in the industry for a long time. I love interviewing people like him because he can help us with our mission of this podcast, which is to help you agents row the boat just a little bit closer to the lighthouse. And the lighthouse is living the life that each one of you deserve to live. And I truly believe that. And I told him before he came on the podcast today, I said, our job is to help them every time we get on this podcast, just some little nugget that they can take back to their office that maybe changes the whole complexion of their agency. So without further ado, please allow me to give him the introduction that he's always deserved. He was born, raised, and lives in Columbus, Ohio. He is married to the beautiful Susan, and he is a graduate of the Ohio State University. For 18 years, from 2003 to 2021, he was the president of Assurex Global, the largest network of truly independent-owned agents and brokers across the globe, 110 firms that generate nearly $30 billion in premium. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound honor today to introduce to you first-time guest on the IGP, and I hope it will not be his last. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you Mr. Jim Hackbarth. How are you, Jim?
Scott, I'm doing well. Thank you for those nice words. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you and Bradley and what you guys do.
Jim, I've got so much more to say, but we've only got an hour and 15 minutes to talk. But let me to give these guys some more of your introduction that I want to include in here as well, because these are some of the things I want to talk about too. Here's the first thing I love about you. You started as an IBM sales rep. Is there anything better that an insurance person could start out as an IBM sales rep? Because, and I know this was a long time ago. In fact, I think it was back in the 70s.
Yep.
So much great training, so much can teach you so many things that probably helped you years down the line. Let's talk about that for just a second. Go back in my DeLorean for a minute and just talk about that and kind of bring us up to today.
Well, it was probably, when you look back, and you guys know this, there's certain times in your life that you don't realize it at the time that it's making a big impact on you. I mean, who puts anyone through 18 months of training? 18 months. You're not allowed to sell anything until you go through extensive training. It's sales training, it's industry training, it's learning technology. And I was lucky when I got done through 18 months of training that the available sales patch or territory was insurance. And then you sit in a big bullpen with 30 other sales reps. The guy next to you might have been a sales rep for 30 years. And you're learning through osmosis and training, et cetera, et cetera. And great experience. And I was fortunate and lucky to have landed in the insurance industry. I think I'd share with you, my undergrad out of Ohio State was in insurance, which was weird at the time. I was a phys ed major prior to that, transferred into Ohio State. It was unfortunate. My father died at a very young age, unexpectedly. He was 53, and he was a claims adjuster for a Midwest insurance company. Mm-hmm. And the day before he died, he actually drove down to where I was going to college at the time in Athens, Ohio, a school called Ohio University, not to be confused with Ohio State. We went to lunch, and he said to me, listen, just do me one favor. Pick up at least one course in business, because if this phys ed stuff, being a high school football coach, doesn't work for you, you're probably going to be a sales guy. Right. And so just take a course. 4 hours later, I got a phone call that he had passed away suddenly.
Wow.
And that a lot of people have been through those things, and those things are life changing. I immediately dropped out of school, transferred next quarter into Ohio State, walked into College of Business, and they said, I said, listen, I need to take a business course. And the only one I could get into was Principles of Insurance. Well, whoever goes into insurance on purpose in any part of life, unless you walk into a family business or something like that. So I took the course. It was the only A I got on my undergrad. At the end of the quarter, the professor came up to me and said, if you'd like to, you ought to consider transferring in to become an insurance major. And I said, absolutely not. I have no desire. And then he said something that was magical. He said, well, there's a fund here. It's called the Griffith Insurance Fund. And we will give money to people that show they have an interest in insurance. And at the time, money was very important to me because I was working 2 part-time jobs to make it through school. And so I did it. And they said, you have to demonstrate that you are sincere. So if you get a part-time job in the insurance industry, that'll help. Went to work for Prudential at night, selling life insurance, and the rest is history. I got bit by it, applied after my undergrad to an underwriting job at Nationwide Insurance and also Westfield Center, and they turned me down. Right. They weren't hiring. It was probably the best choice because I'd have been a crappy underwriter. I would have underwritten anything. Right. And IBM was hiring at the time, and I stepped in there, and it was only through pure luck and timing, which most of the time that's what life's all about, or making sure that you're in the right place at the right time. I was thrown into the insurance patch. Wow. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful place to start.
When you walked into the Principles of Insurance class, were you met with a bunch of other people who had insomnia and were trying to sleep, or were there people in there who actually wanted to learn it?
I'd say it was probably a third of the people really wanted to learn it because their family was in the agency or brokerage business. And the other 2/3 were just getting a check the box because it was actually in a school of finance. And at the time, it was probably one of the easier courses. And the guy that taught it was one of the authors of a book for the CPCU, and he was absolutely fantastic. Wow. But I had been around the insurance industry because my dad had been in the claims area for a carrier. And so, I knew it enough. I didn't want to be around it.
You heard some of those claim stories and you're like, oh yeah, absolutely exactly. Not. Yeah,
exactly. And I was always told, no, I'm going to go buy motorcycle. No, you'll never have a motorcycle. Or I'm going to go jump out of an airplane. No, you're not doing that either. And so I'm thinking, well, who wants to get involved in an industry where it's full of no's? But anyhow, I've been very fortunate to have started there and ended there.
Do you feel like sometimes I'll see in some of these Facebook groups, somebody will mention a business strategy, for example, using a virtual assistant or just something super like that's super common. And I'll see a bunch of agents jump in there and everybody's saying every which way you can say is no. You know what I mean? Right. It's like, no, you can't do that because of this. You can't do that because of this. And almost a lot of times every scenario is something so far-fetched that there's a less than a 1% chance happening. Why wouldn't you take that risk and so on and so forth? Do you feel like our industry has a little bit of a reputation for saying no and a little bit of culture of that? And because we're in risk management, so to speak, we're a little bit risk averse, whereas in other industries, business owners would be willing to take those risks and it pay off?
You know, I see where you're coming from by that, asking that, but it has changed so much in the last 30 years. It was no all the time to change.
Yeah.
And thank goodness for that next gen, which includes you. And I am so energized that when I see the number of young people that are entering this business, I mean, we're talking about people coming right out of college. But I think when you look at that, the interest level of that generation, it matches up purely with what insurance is. It's to help other people, to be in their time of need. And you know this because you guys are deep into it. Nothing happens without insurance. Yeah. Nothing. You don't start a church. You don't start a law practice. You don't buy a house. You don't buy a car if you don't have insurance. And I think when you look at where the world is today and young people, and they understand what insurance is about, and you can actually are helping other people. To me, it's an exciting time. And the number of young people I see going into it is encouraging.
I'm going to drop a name real quick. Mm-hmm. So I dropped your name 2 days ago and I was on the phone with a couple of friends and I was talking to Kat Turns from our
Agency Zoom.
Not Turnus is her last name.
Yep.
Sorry, Kat, from Agency Zoom. She's actually in my phone as Kat Furness. That way I know how to pronounce her last name. I was talking to Kat and I was like, yeah, we got the former CEO of Assurex Global coming on. She's like, oh, Jim, yeah, we go to breakfast all the time. I was like, oh, of course.
Well, we do, because if a young person in this industry calls me and if I can help them, I'm right there with them. And she is very, very sharp, very impressed with her. And she pays forward all the time. But that's the business that you guys are in. You're paying forward now. You don't have to be doing this, but you're doing it.
Well, I'll tell you something about Kat that's interesting. And I'm giving her major props here.
Right.
She is so good at recognizing and training up talent.
Mm-hmm.
If you just name an insurance vendor that is doing good things right now, there's someone at that company that worked for Kat that she trained. She has placed so many people at Wonderwrite, Ascend, like all over the place.
Yep.
And it's really impressive. I really respect people that they're not only willing to train people up, but then let them kind of go their own way and figure out their own path as well, and be supportive of that. It's something that's really lacking in the industry, I think.
It's changed a lot, and the trend is heading in that direction. And again, what you guys are doing is just one example of many of how this industry has changed.
Yep. Jim, I want to say congratulations. Today, if I'm not mistaken, today would have been your 19th anniversary Assurex Global. And I know that's probably brought on some feelings this morning about looking at the past and your period of over 18 years there as the president and CEO. Talk to these insurance agents today about what you learned leading an organization that had over 115 firms that were part of that.
Mm-hmm.
The good, the bad, the ugly that you see insurance independent agents do or did while you were there leading that. Talk to them a little bit about what you saw agencies do that were successful while you were there, because, you know, kind of like a college baseball coach or team or whatever, you could probably look across the firms that were part of that and go, you know, they're really successful. And I know I can see why.
Well, you know, it's a good question. And I was fortunate, to be exposed to so many good firms that were part of Assurex, but also the many firms like yourselves that I got to talk to around the globe, and you get to see those ingredients. And you're right. It's those 2 or 3 things. It's that person that gets up at 5 a.m. in the morning and runs the stadium steps while everybody else is in bed. And, there's a couple key ingredients that I saw. One, always be working on the perpetuation of your business model. Always be working on that. Don't let it lay dormant. And that's, bringing in new talent. That's spreading the ownership when it's warranted. And today's day and age, the valuations and I'm sure you guys get calls every day, the valuations in this industry, staying independent to me. And I'm such an advocate. Now, that doesn't mean that the investment banking backed firms or the publicly traded firms are bad. I'm not saying that, but staying independent as much as you can and taking care of your people. And that's working on the perpetuation of ownership and making sure you got the capital, even if you have to bring in a little bit of outside capital to continue to fund that growth. That means recruiting. One of the things that I saw is that in this industry, which is really different, is that the agency leaders and owners are never satisfied. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but always striving to get better. Don't sit on your laurels. And you're always looking for tools of efficiency. And thank goodness, the amount of technology that's hitting your doorstep today that allows you to be more efficient. You take firms like Ascend or a GloveBox or a Bold Penguin, and those tools that allow you to become more efficient. I think and something that I've seen happen more in the last 8 to 10 years is the investment that firms of all sizes are making in technology. And if you look at how technology has changed, years ago, it was just kind of the back office stuff, the back office accounting. Firms like AMS, which is now Vertafore, and Applied Systems, the 2 large firms. But back then, there were probably 15 firms out there. And then it evolved to kind of more of the front office, and that's where rating came about, and the multi-company rating, and that was probably the beginning of the stages of really having front office technology that's going to positively impact your clients. And now we've got a whole new generation of stuff that to me is very, very exciting. The data analytics tools that you can now start scraping data and providing relevant information to your clients, tools that allow you to become more efficient and effective with what you do. Client-facing stuff. You're right. I mean, I don't want to be calling my agent or broker and pull up my insurance card. I mean, I want to be able to go into a portal and print it down. I had a trigger on my phone today that my boat insurance was due. I know I paid it, but I'm thinking I better get new insurance cards. So, as opposed to calling up my agent, I just went onto the portal, downloaded them, printed them off, put them on my iPhone, poured them to my iPhone, and I'm good to go. So that generation. So ownership, looking for efficiencies all the time. Some of that's embedding the right technology. Don't be scared of bringing in the new technology, and really using technology as a competitive advantage. That's also going to increase your client relationship.
I'll tell you something interesting. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep. No. Love to hear it, Bradley.
I'll tell you something interesting so I'm in a coastal market. I work with a lot of carriers that are super antiquated. And as you and all of the listeners can imagine, I'm considered a squeaky wheel amongst our carriers. And I actually got kind of excited because one of the carriers who tends to not listen to me, we wrote a pretty big policy with this week. So now we're higher up on their radar.
Funny how that happens,
Funny how that happens. Yeah, exactly. So I had actually an underwriter at that company reach out to me that I'm friends with and say, I had no idea that big policy was you guys. But anyway, so when I often talk to carriers, agents, and vendors about becoming more technologically savvy, I have a point that I make to them. And, the industry is getting older. People are retiring. There's young people coming into the industry. The average millennial, I think, stays at a job 3.8 years. The average Gen Z is 2.6, I believe.
Right.
Recently, it was about a year ago, I got an introduction to the chief insurance officer, I think was his title, at Apple Computer. And my very first question to him was, why the hell does Apple have a chief insurance officer? You're not about to start selling insurance, are you?
Right.
And he said, no. So his job, and I asked him to come on the show. He politely declined because he's sort of behind the scenes. His job is to convince insurance carriers and vendors to make their product work on Apple computers. And the reasoning, and it's not an Apple, I'm not going into an Apple Android argument. It's not that. The reason is because you have these Gen Zers coming into the workforce who have never been on any device that's not an Apple device.
Wow.
And you are going to put them in front of a computer that's 5 years old, makes weird noises when you turn it on,
Right.
and is not in the Apple ecosystem that they're used to on this right here.
Yep.
I'm holding up my phone. And I think that's a perfect analogy to why carriers, vendors, and agencies should bring their business and use as much technology that creates efficiency, not inefficiencies. Because some technologies, people add technology for the sake of adding technology, and it creates inefficiencies. But technology like Ascend or GloveBox that creates efficiency, it's going to hurt your recruiting if you are super antiquated, because they can go somewhere else and they're in a technology ecosystem that they're more used to, that they are that's easier. So that's another way to think about why, and that's what we tell all of our carriers. Like, this is why we need you on Ivans, even though I have my reservations with Ivans. We need you on these platforms. We need you downloading commissions, API, all raters, all that stuff, because it's going to ultimately affect the recruiting as a whole. And we've got to start trending in that direction. I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, you're spot on. And of course, Apple would be thinking that way. And it's going back to the previous question you asked. The whole perpetuation ain't going to work unless you bring in the right kind of people and the young people. You're not going to get them unless you can give them the hammer and the nails and the saw, current technology that allow them to do their job. If a firm is not investing into that, then maybe they just ought to start to say, admit it. You're not going to find the right people that your clients want to interact with, that are going to use the right social media tools and use the suspecting and prospecting tools, et cetera. And they're not going to have the tools that the client is going to want to see when you go in and start talking about risk management with them and the insurance, because your competitors who may be better funded are throwing money at it. But, the big thing is also is once you go down that path, it's just, it's an ongoing investment. You have to train your people to use the tools.
Right.
And even the so-called baby boomers, which may be a couple years away from retiring, but they have to embrace it. And so you're spot on, and Apple is spot on. You mentioned Ivans. I'm a good friend of Reed. In fact, he and I were going back early this morning. I really got to know him when I sat on his board at Tech Canary and what they did. What he is doing at Ivans, they're waking up a sleeping giant. Yep. And I'm very excited with what Reed is doing. And, he's one of those 4 or 5 key players in the industry that are making a difference from a big picture technology. And you've got some, there's probably a couple dozen movers and shakers. I've had a chance to work closely with probably a half a dozen to a dozen of them in the last couple years. And the stuff they're coming out with is just amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I've always, to some degrees, even though I promote my carriers to get on Ivans, I've always been somewhat of a critic, just because there's always areas for improvement. Yep. We had Reed on, and I've always respected Reed. I didn't know him in the Tech Canary days, but I knew who he was, and I always respected him. So when they named him CEO, I was like, well, that makes sense. So we interviewed him more as to interview Reed, but also we felt it was our duty to the industry. Here's a company that pretty much touches every part of the industry in some kind of way, to interview him. When we came off that interview, I think I posted on LinkedIn. I said, hey, as someone who's been an outspoken critic of the way Ivans is doing some things, I feel really confident that Reed has his hands on the steering wheel. Like, he is the guy to turn that place and like you said, wake up the sleeping giant.
Yep. No, I'm excited what they're doing, where they're going. And again, that's just part of that next wave of leadership that you guys are all part of, that's happening within the industry.
Hey, I tell you one thing Reed needs to do, I won't say better job of, but needs to start doing that I think would be helpful. If he could get a list of all the independent agency owners out there, and they could probably get that pretty easy. and start sending out like a quarterly newsletter to update people on, hey, this is what Ivans is working on to come out with, because I know they've got a lot of great stuff they're working on, but I don't know if maybe we need to have him on the podcast every 6 months. I don't know, but I don't know exactly what those things are,
Especially pre-read. They didn't do a great job of communicating all the things that and there's several companies I could say that about. Agency Zoom's one I could say that about. They don't do an awesome job updating you the new features.
Because I think he even said on our podcast some things that I didn't know we had access to through Ivans that we could do, reports and, some other things that, Chris Paradiso always talks about calling or emailing. I believe her name's Cal Durand. Is that correct, with Ivans, to get your upload speeds and things?
Right.
You would be shocked at how many independent agents don't know that all they've got to do is pick up the phone or email her, and 5 or 10 minutes later, she's like, yeah, your stuff's messed up. Here's where you need to go to fix it, because your download speed and upload speeds are horrible.
Well, I think if Reed hears that again from you guys, that he'll take action to do it. And I was excited to hear that he was staying after he sold his company, and that he was staying, and that Applied put him in that role.
Right.
I mean, I was involved 30 years ago, and I'm almost like Moses. I was on the board of Ivans way back then. It was a great move for Applied to have bought them. Right. And now that they're waking it up the giant, not in a greedy way. And it's not about the greed of making more money. Yeah, that's all part of it. But what they're going to be doing, and Scott, I think you are 100% on. They need to start talking more about what's coming, and what's coming down the pipe, and how to use it.
Right.
And could you have enough on your plate? Show us how to use it, how to get out there, put it in front of our people, get more carriers on it. Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to help these agents real quick while we're on this podcast, because, action, not words. Right. So guys, if, let me see. Yeah, here it is. So if you want to check your upload and download speeds for whatever management system you have that's tied to the carriers that do download, I think Bradley has one of those, because he has to go through Ray's Tires and Insurance to sell people insurance down on the coast, with all the carriers he has are all regional. And I haven't heard but about one of them in my whole life I've never heard of. But her name, she works for Ivans. She's a great person. Her name is Cal Durland, and her email address, write this down, guys. C Durland, DURLAND @ivansinsurance.com. And Ivans is spelled IVANS.
And what you want is you want to get your connection report.
Connection report. That's exactly what you need.
She's gonna and you can pull it up yourself via the dashboard, but what you're going to find is basically she's going to tell you of all the carriers you have that download, and then all of the different things that they download, because some may download policies, some may download documents, some may do commission downloads, all that kind of stuff. It's going to tell you the percentage that you are utilizing versus not utilizing.
Right. And if you've never done that, you're going to be shocked at what you're missing, because they can help speed that up. She can pull some levers and do some things for you and tell you, like, here's how you can get that upload speed. I think, or can she do it on her end, Bradley? I don't remember.
I have no idea.
I don't know how they do it either.
I think you have to tell the carrier you want. I think if there's something a carrier's downloading that you're not receiving, you have to reach out to that carrier and be like, hey, we want this. For example, commission downloads. If you're not downloading commissions into your system, you have no idea how. If you have, it's okay to get away with it if you're a one man or one woman shop, but if you have more than one employee, you are wasting a ton of time by not downloading commissions, and none of your crap's accurate either, because Larry, Moe, and Curly are entering it into your management system.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hello there. Guys, excuse me for interrupting your regularly scheduled podcast, but I'm here today to get you out of aggregator and cluster jail. This may be the most important message I've ever delivered on the Insurance Guys podcast. Guys, are you a member of a cluster or an aggregator? Does your contract have exit fees, termination payments, buyback provisions? It's time to get your freedom back and do what we did here at I Protect Insurance. Join the AC, the future of aggregators in our industry. Best decision we've ever made, guys. Best decision we've ever made. No entry fees, small $200 a month membership fee, over 50 plus carriers for direct appointments. And by the way, new ones coming on board each and every month. You keep 100% of your commissions, profit sharing every year. Guys, we have made in the last 2 years, each year, our agency has made over $100,000 in profit sharing. Here's the best part, guys. And this is the part I'm the most passionate about. No termination or exit fees. You give the AC 60 days notice and you're free. You go get direct appointments wherever you want. There's no buyback provisions, no exit clauses. Guys, if you're a member of another aggregator and you have termination fees, buyback provisions, exit clauses, every single policy you write, you're digging that hole just a little bit deeper. And one day you're not going to be able to get out of it. It's going to be too much. You're going to be taking out a second mortgage on your home to try to get out of a cluster group. Unbelievable. Guys, go to acfree.org. That's acfree.org and register. Find out why over 650 agencies and $3 billion in premium have chosen the AC. And guys, here's the best part. But wait, there's more. Mention the Insurance Guys podcast when you talk to these guys, and you get 6 months. That's 6 months of no membership fee just by mentioning the Insurance Guys podcast. Go today, www.acfree.org, and let me help you get your freedom back. Have a great day. Hey, Jim, you said something off the subject of Ivans and on to something that I guess selfishly I want to hear more about. You said something earlier that caught my attention. You said something about staying independent. Now, let me kind of add some context to this. A lot of our friends, a lot of my friends and Bradley's friends in the industry have sold.
Yep.
They had to.
Yes.
The money that was being offered, you would be insane not to sell your agency, and most of those people are still with the agency for a number of years as part of the buyout agreement. You said stay independent. Tell me your thoughts on M&A right now and the fact that Bradley and I are at this place in our career. We do get approached. I was on a call last week with somebody that was wanting me to join a bigger group. Tell me your thoughts on that, and where, if you think Bradley and I need to maybe take a harder look at that, because the percentages that are being thrown out are just so much now compared to what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. Tell me your thoughts.
Well, the percentages and the multiples, even on the bottom line or the top line, they continue to be year after year at an all-time high.
Right.
And when I say independent, it's just not the ownership model, but it's the leadership model.
Right.
And I know a lot of firms. I know during my tenure at Assurex Global, at least 50% of the firms turned over. And let's say there's 15 possible suitors that you could consider. If you go down that path, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying make sure you really look underneath the covers of the hood of the car you're getting ready to jump into. Right. It's not always about the money, even though the money in terms of how it could be very impactful on the owners of the firm and your families. People start and build a business and they eventually exit, and it's not necessarily in today's day moving from one generation to the next but just look under the hood of the cars. And if you would, if and when you reach that point, I'd be glad, just call me. I'll be glad to give you my opinion on the 2 or 3 or 4 firms you may want to look at. There's also some consultants in the industry that are, I'm sure you've already heard from them, that can guide you. But when I say independent, it's about the leadership. It's about the mindset. Things will change if you sell your firm to a Wall Street firm. No doubt. It'll change. Those who have the gold make the rules. But there are some out there that leave you in place and allow you to run your business and take care of your employees and be involved in your community, and will also, the benefit, give you the capital to continue to invest forward and bringing in the right talent. And so I'm biased, of course, but I've seen it happen over the last 18 years. And sometimes folks will hang around for a year or two, and then they say, this ain't for me anymore. The culture's changed. It's not for me. And, in the firms you're building and many of your listeners, it's about the culture and how do you preserve that? It is a challenge to stay independent. It is a real challenge to have the right kind of capital to invest forward. You're getting pressure from the markets to give them more business. Some are trimming what they're paying. And then you got to continue to invest forward into technology, hiring people, and hiring and training people takes a lot of capital and time and all that. So it's one of those things, owner of business, you constantly look at. And you look at it not every 5 years, but you got to look at it hard every 6 to 12 months.
Well, it's one of those things. I'll give you an example. About 2 weeks ago, I called Scott. So our business is at this weird inflection point where we're kind of pretty much out of startup phase, and we're transitioning into more of a corporate like structure as far as internal goes. And I'm completely bootstrapped, no investors, no loans, no debt. No, I have a business credit card I pay off every month. That's it. And I think Scott is the same way. And I called Scott and I said, man, you know what everybody talks about? It's like, this is hard.
Yep.
It's hard. I understand why people take investors in debt and all that. Like it's hard because we're at this point to where we need more people than we have, but we can't hire more people than we have.
Right.
Bradley said something, Jim, in a podcast about 6 weeks ago that I could not stop thinking about after he said it, because people will say things to me and then it'll just be 1 or 2 sentences, but it'll resonate with me so much that I can't get it off my mind. And we're in the middle of a podcast just like this. And he said, Scott, we always talk about how hard it is to start a scratch agency. He said, I'm not so sure it's harder for me today than it was when we started scratch. And I started thinking about that. And I thought, you know what? He's right. I think it's harder today. Mm-hmm. There's the old adage of more money, more problems. Right.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm telling you, the more I thought about it, I thought, you know what? I think he's right. I think it's tougher once you get 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 employees. And
when you're a scratch business, writing more business solves all your problems.
Yeah. It does.
When you're more than scratch, writing more business creates more problems.
Right.
Well said. It is a wonderful industry, a great business. But once the investment bankers woke up and looked at this industry starting about 15 years ago, they woke up. They love those renewal dollars. Right. Where else can you wake up January 1 knowing that, 85, 90, 95% of last year's dollar is going to be here?
Correct.
If you're a doctor, it's not going to happen. If you're a lawyer, it's not going to happen. You got to ring the bell January 1, and then you got to invest forward. So when the investment bankers woke up and saw this industry, they kind of skewed it then, and that's what drove up the multiples. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It just takes a lot of discipline and a lot of help from outsiders at times. And so, and again, if and when you guys ever reach that point, I'd love to, help you any way I can. Just to give you some inside advice and some of the things that I've seen and to stay independent. And you don't always have to give up equity control.
Right.
There are, as they say over in London, there are schemes out there where you want to bring in additional outside capital, and it might be 15 to 20% of the ownership. Right. And that you infuse that capital. And now all of a sudden you go hire another 2 or 3 producers, or buy that right kind of technology that you want to put in, and then have on a full-time training manager. Could you imagine that in your firms, having a full-time training manager? How that would alleviate?
That's my North Star. I literally woke up this morning and was like, and I thought about it more than just today. I'm like, that's where I'm trying to get to, where my business has the revenue where it makes sense to hire a training manager, because I hate freaking doing it. I don't like doing it at all.
It's hard. It doesn't leverage your skill sets as leaders of your firms and the things that have gotten you to where you are today.
Right. You mentioned London. I'll tell you something funny. You'll like this. So you guys listen to this. This is, I don't know what the date is, July 14th. The weather, I think for the past few days and the next 5 days in London is phenomenal for this time of the year. In fact, I was just over there last week. I was in London and it was great. And somebody said something, this isn't exact wording, something to the effect of, if you need to get stuff pushed through in London, this is the week to do it because all the underwriters are in great moods because it's good weather.
That's right.
It's like, it's about right.
Brad, were you over there for pleasure or business?
I would love to tell you that I was over there for business to visit Lloyd's, but I was over there on a vacation.
Have you ever had a chance to visit Lloyd's?
Scott and I are going hopefully next year.
Fantastic.
Have never had a chance.
Fantastic. It'll be one of the most exciting experiences. It's like being on the New York Stock Exchange floor.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah. It is Mecca. So,
hey, Jim, I have never had a podcast guest on this podcast at a more perfect time than having you on here today. And I'm going to tell you why. So every 6 months, I come up with a topic that it's all I think about all the time. It just encompasses, it just engulfs me. And for the last 6 months, that's been leadership. And I've gone out and talked and done leadership talks all over the U.S. at different insurance conferences and had a really good time doing that and meeting people. And then today you're on the podcast and I've just come up with a new topic that is now just all over me that I'm trying to kind of get my arms around. And I think the reason I've been thinking a lot about this is our agency is also in a transition period where we've gone from that small boutique agency to growing large enough to have lots of employees and people selling insurance and human resource problems and those types of things. And so my newest topic, and this is why it's so perfect to have you on here today, and I want you to speak to these agents about this. And Bradley mentioned it earlier. When you start a scratch insurance agency as an independent or a captive agency, it's just you. Yep. And you're cleaning toilets and you're doing the service work and you're selling, and maybe you got one person that's helping you out in the office, something like that. But my topic, the newest topic that I have that is now just all over me, is how every single business in America I'm not talking about just insurance. I'm talking about every single business in America starts out what I call simple.
Yep.
You know, we've all seen the picture of Jeff Bezos with nearly a bald head, sitting at that little desk at Amazon.
No muscles yet.
Yeah, yep. He was the little skinny, nerdy guy with the suit on.
Yep.
Well, naturally, every business that grows, especially one that's grown the way that Amazon has grown, goes from simple to complex. And my newest topic of conversation, and I do try to change this up every 6 months, is how can we as leaders that take a business that started simple and is now growing in the complexity factor. We know that's just a natural maturation. Businesses are going to get more complex the bigger you get.
Yep.
How do you keep the processes and every single thing you do in that business, or in this case, agency, dumb it down and keep it simple so that you don't get so complex that the wheels start falling off? And the reason I think you're the perfect guest for this, for 18 years, you were the president and CEO, and you had to have seen this firsthand during the course of your leadership, Assurex Global.
Yep.
How did you manage that? How did you try to keep things simple enough that the wheels didn't just fall off the wagon because everything got so complex?
Well, Scott, I kind of learned that I just from an industry perspective and having had the opportunity to meet and work alongside some very successful people, because I wanted to kind of boil it down to say, what are those 2 or 3 things? And it's really pretty simple, but it's hard to do. And because it takes time.
Right.
You as leaders, any leader, I don't care if you're the CEO of a major insurance company or if you're launching a new high tech or leading an agency or whatever, you got to take care of yourself mentally and physically.
I hope y'all are writing this down.
Because I got to tell you, and while I'm not in the best physical shape, I can run with the best of them if I have. But, there was a time I was flying back and forth to Europe once a week, and then making it home for a kid's football game or baseball game or whatever, because that's important. And when I say mentally and physically, mentally, making sure that you keep balance in your life. It is so easy to work 80 hours a week. and to wear yourself out, but making sure you're spending time with your family and your loved ones and your friends, and you're taking time to relax, using some of the tools that are out there,
right?
Meditation tools and different things like that, or get involved with your faith, whatever moves you. It doesn't, but mentally make sure you're calling time out. It's really hard to do. One of the things that I observed with a lot of our firms, well, they'll actually, you'll schedule it on your calendar. I've got to work out 3 days a week.
Right.
It could be running or, hitting the Peloton or doing yoga or whatever it might be, but just staying and trying to keep your physical health, because you're running at a horrific pace.
Right.
And if you take care of those two things, from what I've seen from a lot of the leaders I've had a chance to work with around the world, it sounds simple, but to put that into place, you take care of those things, the rest will take care of itself.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think it's a magic thing. It's hard to do because it takes time. And how do you balance?
Right.
Well, if you just look at like eating right,
yes,
is so hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's just in general, it's so hard. But then when you combine that with working a ton of hours or being on the road, my buddy Ryan Hanley and I were talking one day about how hard it is being out on the road, just in all different things. And I was in a town doing something, and it's like the only thing available is like Wendy's. It's so freaking hard to eat well when you're on the road, to get your workout in, to, you meet people and they want to go out for beers and that sort of thing. You know what I mean? I totally agree.
Yep.
Well, and more than just that. And that is wildly important. We're about to have secret time, and I haven't had secret time very often lately, and I'm not going to start crying.
Trust tree.
I'm not going to start crying, but I think our podcast listeners need to hear this. I've said this a couple times at different events. I've said this. My lack of understanding of what Jim just said cost me my first marriage.
Sure.
It's the reason why I only get to see my son 2 weeks out of 4.
Right.
And, there's somebody out there listening to this right now that resonates with, because it is so easy the first 5 years that you're building an agency, which Bradley's smack dab in the middle of right now. He's been, I think 2019 was your opening of the independent agency.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not careful, it's going to get away from you. And what I mean by get away from you is your family. You're working 6 days a week. I remember with my first marriage, I had her, our friends would call me on Saturday and be like, "Why aren't you out here at the lake? Your wife's out here with your son. Where are you at?" And I'd be like, "Man, I got to work. I can't,
Mm-hmm.
I can't go to the lake." And I'll take it one step further. And there's a lot of people on this podcast listening right now that need to hear this.
Yep.
I had somebody, he was about Jim's age, tell me this years ago. And I want everybody to hear this. This is secret time, guys. Y'all all need to hear this.
Yep.
And don't ever forget I said this. And I'm speaking to some friends of mine right now, too, that are in the industry that need to hear this. You've got to be extremely careful with alcohol, because a buddy of mine, again, about Jim's age, he pulled me aside years ago. I was in my early 30s, and he said, "Scott, I'm going to tell you something. And don't ever forget I said this." He said, "One thing you have to be careful of as you get older and you have a bigger business and you have lots of stress and anxiety is you have to be careful not to fall into the habit of going home. Doesn't matter what time you get home, 6, 7, 4:30, whatever time it is, and pouring a drink of, say, whiskey on ice, or having a cocktail, could be a vodka and tonic, whatever it is, and having a drink." And he said, the reason you have to be very careful, I know that takes the edge off. I know it does, because I've been there before. But he said, what happens is over time, not a week or two, but over years, that one drink turns into 3 drinks, turns into 6 drinks. And then by the time you're about 65 or 70, you're a functioning alcoholic.
That's exactly right. Great advice. That's very true.
And I have seen that. I have friends of mine that have now retired that I see very rarely, that now they basically wake up about 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they start drinking.
Yep.
And I don't know that they could stop if they wanted to, because they've been doing this shit for 20 or 30 years now.
Yep.
And Jim, you probably know people like that.
Oh yeah. I'm at that generation going into my chapter 2 that you see a lot of it, which is, I golf. Yeah, I play golf 1 day a week, but I'm busy. I'm busy sitting on boards. It keeps me mentally challenged. I sit on about 3 or 4 in SureTech boards, a couple of nonprofits. But you got to stay, even, I don't care what chapter of life you're on, keep your mental aspect of your life as sharp as you can. Right. And again, it's, I learned some of that from a fellow that he's a good friend. His name's Bill Jetron. Bill is now president of MMA, Marsh Mack Agency. His firm in Minneapolis used to be part of Assurex. And I learned a lot from Bill, because Bill would really make sure that mentally he was staying sharp. People that really get to know, people that know me well, that, if you were to look at me, you'd say, I can't believe he's been doing yoga for 20 years, a couple days a week. I have a meditation practice that I follow. There's a couple great apps out there, Waking Up or Breathe, and spend 15 to 20 minutes by yourself some period of the day. I don't care if you have to get up at 4:30, clear your head. Get rid of the cobwebs. Keep that vision thing where it needs to be. Take care of your family. Scott, we've all learned, we've all had those challenges in life. It may lead to divorce or regrets, but, look ahead and don't look back, and make sure that mentally you're keeping your head tuned up. The thing about the young generation that's coming into the insurance industry or any industry at a point in time, and it's about time that people talk about mental health and taking care of your mental health and the mental health of your employees, and giving them the tools and to help them and all that. And then physically to carve out that time where, I don't care if you do 20 minutes a day or two hours a day, but find that time. And Bradley, you talked about it's so easy to drive by the Golden Arches or In and Out and say, I skipped breakfast and it's now 2:30. I'm hungry. I'm just going to drive through, and I don't order 1 cheeseburger. Maybe I'll order 3 because I'm really hungry. And I skip breakfast. And before you know it, then you go get your annual blood work, and the doctor looks at you. I'll give you a true story. It was probably starting about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. I started doing an all-day annual physical. I'm talking all day, every test imaginable. Yep. And I remember the doctor asked me to fill out some paperwork before we met. And he says, what are your goals? And I said, well, I've got 3 daughters. And at the time I was probably 54. I said, I want to walk every daughter down the aisle. That's one of my objectives. And after all day, he came in with a book full of data, and he said, I got some good news for you. You'll be able to walk every daughter down the aisle as long as you do it sometime within the next 8 years, because you are on a path to have this is where your numbers are trending. If you don't get those under control. So when you reach that chapter of life, it could be in your 40s or 50s or whatever, because there are certain people that just they don't make it, and they get into the circle of bad habits. Right. And then one thing leads to another, then you get sloppy running your business, and then your relationships fall apart. People leave your firm and all that. So that may be more information than what you wanted to hear from me, but comes down to the 2 things. You take care of those things, a lot of other things start to take care of themselves.
Well, and not only that, but with a business as big as the one that you were running, one thing you see when businesses get bigger, larger, more people, human resources, board members, board of directors,
right.
A lot of people relying on you.
Well, that plus, you go back to complexity, and business just naturally, as it grows, becomes more complex. You get to this point where decisions take time, lots of time. If you're a middle manager, a C-level executive at Nationwide Insurance, Travelers Insurance, somewhere like that, and let's say you've got a great idea, and it really is. It's a fantastic idea that would help everybody. Well, you can't just take that to Scott Howell and go, hey, man, I got this great idea. I think we need to implement it, because I'm going to say, let's go, let's do it.
Yep.
You work for somebody like that. And again, business gets more and more complex as it gets bigger. Well, now that decision goes up to their manager. That guy goes to somebody else. Maybe they talk about it in a board meeting, and 6 months later, maybe it comes back downhill to you that we're going to think about it, but it's going to take a couple of years.
Yep.
That's the problem. That's the complexity part of this that I'm talking about as well, is decisions. Just, it seems like that small snowball turns into a big rock that you're rolling uphill as you get bigger.
Well, when you get bigger, it gets more complicated. One of the other things that I, was fun watching is as firms would grow, don't hesitate to hire people better than you.
Oh,
and then hand it off.
Right.
One of my joys in life, especially when I was leaving Assurex, was my heir apparent. He actually was a Assurex Global firm at one point in time in his life, and then he was in Minneapolis too, and they sold. And I was fortunate enough a couple of years ago, we stayed friends to bring him in to be my heir apparent.
Right.
Dean Hildebrand's his name. Dean is probably 10 times smarter than me, but I'm not. That's not saying a lot. I'm not the brightest bulb in the box. But to be able to hand off things, and it's one of the things I figured out a long time ago, and I learned it from other people, and especially when I was in the technology side of this business. Hire people better than yourself, even if you have to pay them more.
Right.
And what it allows you to do. But you got to reach to that point where you have enough capital, and you might have to bring in outside capital, a little bit in order to scale. But you stay the captain of the ship and stay in a leadership role. You set the culture, you set the pace. Everyone watches you more than people think.
Yep.
They watch every move you make.
I think about that every day. In fact, I just told my son that 2 nights ago. He had baseball practice till 9:00.
Right.
It's nighttime, nobody on the road. We were going back home, and I said, we were talking about some of his friends that had been making some bad decisions, been running around with older kids. He's 15. Some of his friends running around with 17, 18-year-olds.
Yep.
And I said, son, I need to tell you something. And I want you to always remember that I said this. I said, I know that you're going to make some bad decisions. I know that because you came from my loins, and I made some horrible decisions. And when I was a teenager.
Yep.
But I said, I need to tell you something that my dad never bothered to tell me. And it's very important to me. And I want you to listen to what I'm saying. I said, every time you go out to a field party or you go drinking with your friends when you get older, because it's going to happen. And if you don't think it is, you've lost your damn mind. You represent our family.
Yep.
You represent me, and you represent your mama and all the other people that love you. You represent those people. And you need to remember that before you go make some horrible decision that could not only affect you, but it could affect everybody in our family.
Yep.
And
Great.
I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but it just sounded like that's where we were going with that. But
Scott, that's great advice. But it also, I think I've seen that happen. And I think you guys probably do the same. It's the same conversation you have with your employees.
Right.
And because it's a family, you take care of each other.
Yep.
And just think twice before you might decide to say something to a client that you shouldn't say.
Or post some inappropriate picture on Facebook or
absolutely.
Whatever.
Oh, and that's a whole other topic. I mean, the things that sometimes people post up on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, it's like, oh my gosh, just be careful.
Right.
And I'm a big fan of it, but just be careful. It's like, putting a hammer and a saw in the wrong hands. You give that to someone that's 2 years old, nothing good's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, I've got one final question, unless Bradley's got one for you that he wants to ask before we get off this podcast. You've been in this a long time. You've got lots of relationships with people in this industry. You've seen a lot. You've seen the progression of where we were versus where we are today. You know the environment that we're in, both economically and the insurance environment that we're in right now.
Yep.
Where do you see, and I'm not going to put a timeline on this relative to 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but the future of insurance and what these agents listening to this can expect that are in their, let's say 30s, 40s, maybe they've got a couple $1 million in premium on the books, 10 million, somewhere in that range. What can they expect over the next, I don't know. Again, I hate to put a timeline on it, but just the future of insurance for them as they move forward in their career.
Well, I'll put a timeline, let's say the next 3 to 5 years. Looking out past that, it's too uncertain, especially given the economy and everything that's going on in the world today and all those other kind of things. But you're going to see more technology that's going to be coming out that you want to embrace. And a lot of it's being driven from the agents and broker world. You look at the power of data. We've only scratched the surface as an industry on what the knowledge you can gain from harvesting data. And I've been privileged to see and be involved with some of those companies that are using data and providing it to agents and brokers, or show you how to use it to put a benchmarking report or whatever in front of your clients when they say, well, how come I need to buy this kind of insurance, et cetera, or to do the data mining inside your own systems, or to select your carriers who are going to embrace technology with you so that you can give the right kind of service to your clients, but also your employees are productive and are leading happy lives. Right. So I think you're going to see data analytics as we know it today to go to the next chapter. It's going to be more relevant with your client relationships. Been fortunate enough, I serve on the board of a company called Enable. And what Kabir Syed did with Risk Match, he sold it to Vertafore. And then after he left after a couple of years, and the firm he's launching now is absolutely incredible, and the power of data. And you don't have to be a big mega firm to embrace and harvest data. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to be important. Everyone throws artificial intelligence around, all the time. I think you'll see some more of that. And it's not locked at the big firms or at the carriers. It's going to come down through the pipes of Ivans and things like that. You talked about Ivans earlier. Think the amount of data that runs through those pipes.
Yeah.
And what can be done to harvest that data. And it's not to use that data, to turn against the carriers, but it's to how do you enrich the client relationship and engage your client and show them things about their business that otherwise that they may not know. Now you're that value-added, trusted advisor that's not going to go away. So I think you're going to continue to see a lot of changes. I know you guys know Andrew Wynn at Ascend. What those guys are doing, when you talk about it fast, it sounds simple, but the impact that that's having on the efficiencies of firm, premium financing, collection, and getting the money that's owed, it's incredible. And
agents have no idea. Like even if you have an idea, you have no idea.
Dude, hey, I'm telling y'all both, when they get this thing dialed in, where you no longer, even if it's an agency billed account, it turns into immediately a direct bill account. That is mind blowing. Like that's going to be, and I think that's something that they're going to probably have ready in at least the next 6 to 12 months.
It's 90% there now.
Oh, I know.
It's getting to the adoption level, and all the vendor partners and management system partners and that sort of thing.
There won't be nobody, especially if you write a bunch of the ENS type business or use MGA brokers for agency build, which a ton of agencies do. That's probably half of our business now.
Well, and think of the impact that has.
Yeah, game's over then. Game's over.
Up a couple FTEs that you can put in different types of role. Bradley, that's an FTE that could be a training manager or whatever, and the efficiencies. And again, going back to the data thing, I think we're on our third generation of data analytical tools. And again, you don't have to be a data scientist. These are tools where they're generating the reports. So you're going out and calling that client, and then you can make key decisions on behalf of your client because that's what they're paying you for. And you can show them why you need this kind of coverage, et cetera, et cetera. And again, there's a lot of them out there. I've been very impressed with what Enable's building. I think Ivans has got some stuff coming, and there's room for everybody in the sandbox. And so, anyhow, those are my thoughts.
Bradley, you got anything you'd like to add to that?
I can't follow that, man. I'll let you close us out.
Jim, it was a blessing to have you on the show today. I'm going to get your contact information from Bradley. I want to stay in touch with you because just got a lot to talk about.
Hey, Scott, Brad, I applaud what you're doing. I love helping others. I'm in that chapter life of paying forward is important. We're there every day, but when you're fortunate to be in the spot I am, it's all part of life. I love what you do. I applaud what you do. It takes time, but it's a reflection of what makes agents and brokers special. Love you guys. Don't hesitate to get a hold of me if I can be of any help at any time. All righty.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great.
As I end every podcast, rewards come from action, not discussion. Get your ass out from behind that desk today. Stop running TPS reports. Make sure you take care of your health, go to the doctor, work out every day, do something to help your mind mentally outside of insurance, because that's all we think about in the insurance business, especially if you're an agency owner or a staff member. We just think about insurance all day long, unlike everybody else out in the big bad world. But take care of yourself. Make sure you're getting sleep. Make sure you're working out. Make sure you're doing all those things that keep you refreshed and you don't get burned out as quickly if that happens. So go make money for your family, for your wife, for your husband, for your kids' college fund. Go make money for your parents out there that are struggling and need help. You cannot give back the way that you need and want to give back unless you're making money. I'm sorry. I wish it didn't have to be that way, but it just is. Go write good business for the agencies that you represent, and go write good business for the companies that you represent. Bradley Flowers, I love you.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Jim.
Well said.
Jim,
thanks, gentlemen. Be well.
Jim, we love you too.
Love
guys,
you, man.
You are listening to the Insurance Guys podcast, and we'll see you back here real soon. And we love each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being a part of our family. We'll talk back real soon. Take care. Thanks for listening to the Insurance Guys podcast. If you need to know more about me or you need to get in touch with Scott, you can always reach me at theinsuranceguyonline.com or email me at scott@iprotectinsurance.com. And if you need to get in touch with Mr. Bradley Flowers, go to portalinsurance.com or email him at bradley@portalinsurance.com. Guys, we love you. Thank you so much for listening to our show and being a part of our family. And we look forward to seeing you again next week on the next episode of the Insurance Guys podcast. Take care.